Hey, welcome back to Well, That's Interesting. The I don't think either of those should be there edition. Today is episode 193. Queen Bumblebees can survive a week underwater. And this parasite lived in a woman's eye for 2 years. I know. That last one was a doozy, but breathe in and out. We will get through it together. If you're a longtime member of the flock, this isn't your first parasite rodeo. In fact, this isn't your first parasite found in eyes rodeo. Well done. And if you're a longtime member of the flock, you also know, on this show, we love a good whoopsie-daisy. Especially if that whoopsie-daisy leads to a new discovery that changes the way we look at our world, or even our universe. Just a few weeks ago in episode 182, we learned that a typo in a set of coordinates plugged into the radio telescope over at West Virginia's Green Bank Observatory led researchers there stumbling into a new class of galaxies. Galaxies without stars. Yes, thanks to a typo, we now know things like that exist. It's wild, and if you haven't had a listen, just please do. It's just a wild, wild time. Just 2 weeks ago, in episode 191, researchers at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, made a serendipitous poop-filled discovery when they noticed their genetically altered mice always produced floaters. Every one of them, all the time. And thanks to these little lab creatures, we have concrete evidence as to why some poops sink or float. Well, today, in the first half of the show, we are sticking with little creatures and happy accidents. We are heading on over to the University of Guelph in Canada, where some pretty important research on our life-giving friends, the common eastern bumblebee, has been taking place. Now, we're going to get into a lot of fun facts about bumbles, one of them being that their colonies don't live in hives, like honeybees, but rather in nests underground. So when researchers were checking in on some hibernating queen bees kept in soil-filled tubes, adorably called hibernacles, and saw that the tubes had accidentally been flooded with water, their hearts sank. When the bees were removed from those hibernacles, and what took place afterwards, however, it will bring you fucking joy. Well, yes, it ended well for those bees, and the results of a new bumblebee study is shining a much-needed positive light on their future. We will get to it. Then after the break, it's going to get uncomfortable. We're going to talk about an even smaller creature called pentastamids, who also go by the name tongueworms. No, don't hit the stop button. Stick with me here because, good news, they have nothing to do with tongues. They just so happen to look like tongues, kinda. If your tongue was pale, white, ribbed, and had 5 small protrusions, 4 of which are clawed legs and the 5th bearing a mouth. So yeah, totally like a tongue. Also, great news, these things want nothing to do with you. They are parasites that target other animals like reptiles to fulfill their life cycle. So, when they happen to end up inside a human, it's totally by accident. Not the kind of pleasant whoopsie-daisies like the first half of the show, however. We will be heading on over to the Democratic Republic of Congo, where a 28-year-old patient was found to have what's usually inside the lungs of a snake inside her eye. Now, which species of pentastamid it was, how in the holy hell it got there, and what the odds are of this happening to anyone shall all be revealed. Oh, by the way, I'm Jill Chacha, and if this is your first time listening, hello, and welcome to the flock, my wheezing business goose. To begin, we're going to get acquainted with our fuzzy, pointy friends, the common eastern bumblebee. True to their name, you can find these cute little bumbling fuckers headfirst in many plants across eastern North America, including asters, thistle, apple trees, roses, raspberry and blueberry plants, goldenrod, and impatiens, which, one, also go by the name Touch Me Not, so they're all about consent. And 2, it's possible this is where these bees got their scientific name, Bombus impatiens. Their colonies can expand up to 500 individuals, all overseen by a queen. And get this, labor is divided amongst the colony depending on body size. Smaller bees feed the larvae, and larger bees act as bouncers, if you will, or forage for nectar and pollen. Now, for the very fun facts. Their nests can be found 1 to 3 feet below the surface. And entrance tunnels have been found to be 18 inches to 9 feet in length. That's fucking fancy. Also fancy, a solitary queen bee can produce eggs without mating, a process known as haplodiploidy. I don't know if that's how you say it, but if not, that's how it should be said. Haplodiploidy. Say it with me now. Haplodiploidy. Excellent. Now, to start her vast colony, the queen will then sit on these eggs for about 2 weeks to keep them warm. When they hatch, the queen feeds pollen to the baby bees, aka larvae. I know. Fucking adorable. It's almost aggravating. At 2 weeks old, the larvae then become moody teens, spinning cocoons around themselves and stay in their rooms until they develop into adult bees. So, in the beginning, the queen only takes care of the first batch of bees. That first batch grows into worker bees that will then clean the nest, guard it, find food, and take care of the next batch of bees. Let's talk about that new batch for a minute. According to raritanwaters.org, bees born in late summer become male bees and future queen bees. Put a pin in that. Both leave the nest as soon as they mature. Males from other nests mate with future queens, and then those males die. After mating, future queen bees fatten themselves up and hibernate throughout the winter. End quote. Put a nice, juicy pin in that hibernation, too. We will very much get into it. Meanwhile, back at the original nest, an event of Shakespearean proportions is about to take place. As the hive grows and grows and grows over spring and early summer, it may reach a critical capacity by late summer. And it's time to unpin that first pin. Researchers have documented when some colonies reach 200 worker bees at this point, a tipping point may occur. Workers sting the queen bee to death, and they do this to make room for a new era, for a new queen bee is to emerge and settle new colonies. Now, not as dramatic, but interesting, bumblebees don't have ears, but they do have smelly feet to help identify themselves. Their 4 wings can beat up to 240 times per second, and they are considered one of the most important species of pollinator bees in North America. So, now that we know too much about Bombus impatiens, we can see why researchers like Sabrina Rondeau and Nigel Raine at the University of Guelph in Canada are just head over heels about these creatures, and why they're dedicating their careers to saving them. With climate change prompting frequent and extreme floods in regions around the world, including North America, it poses, quote, an unpredictable challenge for soil-dwelling species, particularly bees nesting or overwintering underground, end quote, said Nigel to phys.org. Now, one of the known challenges is runoff of pesticide residue into that very soil. It's a concern both Sabrina and Nigel share, and it was Sabrina who fired up a study on the effects of pesticides on queen bumblebees. This particular study involved keeping hibernating bees in soil-filled tubes called hibernacles, stored in the lab's fridges. On one fine day, during a routine check on these ladies, a freak accident had occurred overnight. Quote, moisture had flooded the tubes and plunged 4 of the insects underwater. I kind of freaked out, she told Sophia Quagula of NewScientist.com. I was sure the queens were dead, end quote. Well, after the shock and disappointment subsided, Sabrina plucked the bees from their hibernacles and laid them out to dry before discarding them. Turns out, this single act revealed an evolutionary aspect of these bees never seen before. My friends, the supposed drowned queens began moving They were alive. They survived the amount of time they had been submerged. Quote, I've been studying bumbles for a long time, a very long time. I've talked about it to a lot of people and no one knew this was a possibility, end quote. She told phys.org. Now, I know what you may be thinking, that's fucking great news, but we need to figure out how long they were underwater. Like 5 minutes, 5 days? Also, has anyone checked on what's up with the fridges? Sounds like they need a new gasket. Great questions. And yes, I agree, it may be the gasket. And yes, Sabrina agreed. We need to figure out what the fuck and how many fucking days these ladies can survive being submerged. An experiment was in order. My friends, head on over to our social media stuffs and tap on today's post. Swipe on through until you see a graphic. And I'm going to pull it up here myself. And you know what? I think Sabrina and the gang did a great job. What you're seeing here is an artistic rendering of the 3 tubes, each representing how 143 hibernating queen bumblebees were divided into control and experimental groups. What we've got here is 1 tube that looks to be filled with a little soil and a bee. That is the control. Then you got yourself another tube filled with the same type of soil and just enough water where a queen could relax and float. And then you got the 3rd tube. This one is a little different. It does have the same amount of soil and the identical amount of water, but there's a, quote, plunger-like apparatus, as described by the study, that's keeping a bee just underneath the surface, like totally submerged. Yeah. Now, as an animal lover myself, this sounds fucking awful, but stick with me here. And stick with Sabrina and Nigel, co-authors of this study called Unveiling the Submerged Secrets, Bumblebee Queen's Resilience to Flooding. And as you can tell by the title, these ladies will be kicking ass. Let's get into it. So, here we are. We have 143 queens divided into the tubes you see before you. Each of these tubes, housing each of these ladies, went through 3 trials. 8 hours in this environment, 24 hours in this environment, and then finally, get this, 7 whole ass days in this environment. So that means, yes, you're right, a group of queens were underwater for 7 days straight. So, what the fuck happened? Drum roll, please. Thank you in the back. Quote, after the submersion period, queen survival was assessed 1, 4, and 8 weeks from the day the submersion treatments were applied. Survival of queens remained consistently high across all experimental groups for up to 8 weeks post-treatment. Notably, 81%, 17 out of 21 of the queens that were subjected to the most intense submersion and duration, i.e. underwater for 7 days, were still alive after 8 weeks of artificial overwintering, compared to 88%, 15 out of 17 for the control group, end quote, from the study. My completely dry business goose, you heard that right. 81% of the bees held underwater for 7 days survived. And they were like, no big deal, even after 8 weeks. When you compare that survival rate to the bees exposed to no water whatsoever, there's barely a statistical difference. If that sounds fucking wild to you, it is. Quote, wow, the fact that you could submerge a terrestrial animal in water for a week and find that it is still alive is indeed very surprising, said Lars Chitka at Queen Mary University of London to New Scientist. Surprising indeed. My friends, I ask, how long can you hold your breath? I'm gonna bet it's not for 7 days. No human can. In fact, no other terrestrial animal comes close. I gave the longest a terrestrial animal can hold a breath a Google, and holy shit, it's the sloth. Yeah, this fucking sloth can hold, get this, they can hold their breath for 40 minutes. It's impressive, but not 7 days. So, how in the holy hell can these itty-bitty fuzzies do it? Well, like the sloth, these queen bumblebees drop their metabolism rate, so much so They need very little oxygen to survive, and they can make do with the air already stored inside their bodies. But unlike the sloth, they can drop their metabolism rate to a point where being cut off from the world for 7 days is a walk in the park. Is your mind blown? I mean, are you thinking, damn, this will probably help with all the flooding and climate change? Well, if you're thinking that, you're not alone. So are Sabrina and Nigel, who went on to tell New Scientist, since these bees hibernate in the ground, extreme weather can destroy their safe space. It's a pinch point in their life cycle. That is a problem, as about 1/3 of all bumblebee species are already declining. Discovering that they are physically adaptive to surviving a possible case of flooding is really, really good news. End quote. Well, how about that? Good fucking news. I will take it. The team's next steps are investigating the long-term impact on the bees' health and the effects of each submersion, of what the effects such submersion could have on future colonies. So, I tell you what, my hopes are high. Yeah, after the break. We're moving on from beautiful North America to the beautiful Congo, and from adorable bees to the stuff of nightmares. We're going to learn about another tiny creature that, let's just say, you will remember, even if you don't want to. So please, stay tuned.
Welcome to the Flash Finds podcast, the world's fastest podcast where we explore how Facebook can help you with the stuff you're into. I'm Emma Rogue, joined by Nathan the Cat Lady, a Facebook creator. So Nathan, if you're into pets, what kind of stuff can you find on Facebook?
Well, I make reels about useful tips for pet owners. For instance, cats don't like still water, so all of my cats have cat fountains.
Oh my gosh, that's so cute. What a great episode. See you next time on the Flash Finds podcast, all about discovering the stuff on Facebook you care about. Bye.
Hey there, I'm Dylan Lewis, one of the hosts of Motley Fool Money. Each weekday on Motley Fool Money, we talk through the business news you need to know and the stories moving stocks on Wall Street. On weekends, we dive into the industries shaping tomorrow and host the experts, authors, and executives that understand them. Tune in for insights, a long-term perspective on investing, and of course, stock ideas. Plenty of them. To quote a listener, it pays to listen. Check us out and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.
And we're back. We are so back. And just like in the first half of the show, we're going to start by getting acquainted with a tiny creature. This one doesn't fly, but it does squirm, and they don't live underground, but rather in the upper respiratory tract of mostly reptiles, birds, and some mammals where they lay eggs. All of nature's creatures are miracles. My lanky business goose, I'd like to introduce to you pentastamids, which, according to our other lanky friend, the wiki, are a group of parasitic arthropods, but recent molecular studies point them to being highly derived crustaceans. If that sounds like the craziest combination of things, an arthropod, like spiders, plus crustaceans, like shrimp, you are damn right. These animals look unique. If you so wish, please head on over to our social media stuffs and tap on today's post. Slide past all the bumbles and you shall see one species of 130 known species belonging to this group. So there is a lot of them. And even more good news, when adults, their sizes vary from about 1 to 14 centimeters or half an inch to 5.5 inches in length, and they have 5 appendages. One is a mouth. The others include 2 pairs of hooks, which they use to attach to their host. These 5 appendages led to their scientific name, pentastamids, which means 5 openings. Coincidentally, that was my nickname in high school. So clearly, everything about these animals is charming, and we haven't even gotten to their life cycle yet, which is right now. Hold on to your clenched cheeks, because this is going to be one graphic ride. Here we go. Eggs, lodged inside reptilian or bird lungs, are coughed out by the host, or they can take an alternate road and leave the host body through the digestive system, aka pooped out. Either way, imagine these eggs landing in water or on the ground to be eaten by an intermediate host, which is commonly either a fish or a small herbivore mammal. Then, as though right out of a scene from Alien, the larva hatches in the intermediate host and breaks through the wall of the intestine. There they hang out until they grow into adults, and they wait. They're waiting for the intermediate host to be eaten by their main host, a reptile or bird. When their patience pays off, they crawl from the main host's esophagus into the lungs, where they can finally lay eggs, and the miracle of life and this cycle can continue. Now, if you stuck with me through all of this, you are a top-tier business goose. Please give yourself a round of applause. Well done. And I know you're probably saying, gee, thanks, I feel great, but I know this thing somehow ends up in a person. For the love of God, how? Great question. Join me, will you, in the gorgeous nation of the Democratic Republic of Congo, which is all too frequently in the news for heartbreaking reasons. We've been to the DRC before for more joyous reasons, and if you continue to stick with me here, this one will end well too. As a refresher, the DRC, where the fuck is it? Well, for my fellow geographically challenged Americans, don't worry, I've got you. Imagine Africa. Thank you. Point to its very center, and there you will find the second largest country on this continent, and the 11th largest in the world by land size. Now, if you point to the northwest corner, just above the equator, you'll find the small town of Basankusu, home to a wee 24,000 people. Now, between the size of this country and the political turmoil, if you're in a small town and in need of, say, eye surgery from specialized doctors, the wait may be long. But thankfully, for a 28-year-old soon-to-be patient, the help does arrive. Earlier this year, a medical team arrived close enough to Basankusu for those seeking treatment. Now, our patient was in tip-top shape, except for a concerning and notable mass in the corner of her eye, under the conjunctiva. Now, what in the holy hell is that? Don't worry, I gave it a Google, and all you need to do is have a look-see in the mirror. So take a look at the white part of your eye. There you go. Fabulous. Hello, gorgeous. That white part of your eye actually has a clear covering, and it extends into your upper and lower eyelid. That covering is the conjunctiva, and this patient had something curled up underneath it. And brace yourself, it was about half an inch in size. Now, compared to the human eye, that is so goddamn big. For context, the average human eye is just one whole ass inch across. This thing was half an inch in size. So like I said, it was notable. And good news, it gets worse. Quote, upon examination, they found the mass could move. End quote, from Nicoletta Lanise of LiveScience.com. I know, this is rough, but stick with me, you got this, and so did the doctors. The object was surgically removed, and upon further examination, you guessed it, it was a pale, C-shaped larva. Our patient had accidentally become an intermediate host. But for what, exactly? And yes, I can hear you screaming for a number of reasons, but also the answer. It's a pentastamid. But which kind? Remember, there are 130 of these damn things. Well, after some poking and prodding at a local lab, scientists found that it belonged to a species called Armillifer grandis. And to be honest, this species has so many signature visual characteristics, you don't have to do much poking. If you feel bold, head on over to our social media stuffs and tap on today's post. Because yes, I have a picture of what was birthed from this patient's eyeball. If you don't care to look, I get it. All you need to do, well, is just imagine, if you want, a half-inch larva which has clear segmented lines running down its body. When it grows into a worm-like looking adult of a few inches in length, those segments thicken and become ribbed looking. And it's fucking awful to look at, I'm not gonna lie. It's just, why, God? Anyway, It's even more awful for the snakes, where these adults typically end up inside their respiratory tract to lay eggs and then die. So, yeah, our patient is very much human. So, what the fuck? Well, our medical team had a few thoughts. Perhaps she ate unwashed veggies, to which some expelled eggs were clinging to, or maybe she drank contaminated water. Maybe she even handled some infected snakes. Turns out snakes are a source of food for the people in this region. When the staff asked if the patient was familiar with any of this, she responded no. Snakes just aren't a part of her life, and she has access to clean water. So, now what? Just like us, the perplexed team got back to the drawing board. Until the patient had her own eureka moment. She told doctors, no, snakes aren't on the shopping list, but crocodile meat is. Yes, there you have it, my friends. It's believed the patient consumed undercooked crocodile meat that happened to be speckled with eggs. And the one egg to have survived the meal and hatch, the equally perplexed larva had no idea which way to go because she was no fish or herbivore, so it just took a meander up. Yeah, well, I'm happy to say the patient is fine, and she made the record books. So, yes, this is the first known case of ocular pentastomiasis caused by crocodile meat. So please, everyone, a hearty round of applause for this lady. Yes, I see you. Thank you in the back. Well done. Oh, and I also see your other... Yeah, I know what you're thinking. I see also a very concerned look on your face. You're like, hold up. First case caused by crocodile meat? So this has been caused before by other meat? And this problem has an official name. So how often does it happen? Yes. Great questions. Yes, people can become hosts by ingesting mostly infected snake meat. But the eyeball thing is super, super rare. Quote, the parasites most often invade the internal organs and the tissues surrounding them. These infections frequently cause no symptoms and therefore may be undercounted. They're often spotted when a person is undergoing surgery for something else. Quote from livescience.com, who doesn't like a surprise during surgery? You're like a Kinder Egg. Prior to 2014, only 15 other cases of ocular pentastomiasis has been reported worldwide. Just 15. And this is probably a very accurate number because, boy howdy, if you take a peek at the larva that came out of this lady's eye, you'd be screaming from the rooftops to get it out. And thankfully, she was able to. All is well, but we will be having dreams about this. You're welcome, and thank you for listening, rating, subscribing, telling your friends about queens that could survive a week underwater, and I bet you a lot of other queens would feel that's relatable. Tell them about the parasite that lived in this woman's eye for 2 years. Oh, by the way, yes, it did live in her eye for 2 years before she got help. And a tongue worm-sized thanks to the folks over at Airwaves Media, the podcast network to which WTI belongs. If you love this show, and you do, you'll love the other podcasts in this family. And please, stay interesting.